All right, click the links to join channel here where it's subscribe star. So, welcome to 1984 meets Weimar, basically, is where we are. Gaslighting is when people lie to your face. You see a situation and a reasonably prudent person in similar circumstances would reach the same conclusion because everyone's on the same page, or at least they're going to need to be if they want to make civilization work. And looks around. It's like, civilization isn't working very well, is it? No, friend, it's not. But gaslighting is when they will say that what is happening isn't happening, and then they'll just deflect ad hominem and straw man. A really good example, well, this article is a pretty good example of it. And the podcast, if you want to listen to it, to listen to these kind of people is painful. Twitter is another good example of it. Twitter is a collection of insane people who are very public about their insanity. So they are, in this case, lying to push globalist propaganda. And in her interview, if she didn't strawman, she wouldn't have much else of substance to say. In fact, when you take everything she said, if you wrote it out and you summed it up, she doesn't actually make a coherent argument. She doesn't say anything of substance. It's almost all ad hominem. I think she makes one factually based coherent argument in the whole podcast. She just calls everyone istophobic when they mention that, oh, Cleopatra, yeah, the Egyptians. Yeah, that was a pretty well-known historical figure. The Egyptians were not sub-Saharan black Africans. Sorry that someone has to break that to you, but there's a large amount of scholarship. People are fascinated by the Egyptians for some reason. I mean, for good reason. It's fascinating history. But I'm no scholar of the thing. But like, wasn't one of the guys he had a pair of shoes with two groups under on the soles of his slippers because he liked to step on the. Don't say anything in the comments. He liked to step on those two groups. I mean, that was like that's in history. It's like a well-known historical thing. It's kind of funny. It's like he hated these two groups so much he walked on them all day because they made good unpaid servants. Oh, well, just ignore the history and the historical artifacts and like every piece of evidence to the contrary. The pyramids, yeah, it's in Africa, North Africa, and actually there are pyramids in Europe. Radar discovers them. They're just buried under natural hillsides now, but the pyramids are there. Like Europeans at one point were building them. Also, for some reason, it's just something humans do. They figure out a way to build a structure that will last for like tens of thousands of years. But then the Europeans moved on. And there's still pyramids in like the deepest of jungles of Latin America where they're just overgrown. They're like, oh, geez, this is like there was a civilization here 10, 20,000 years ago. Anyway, she just calls everyone istophobic when they mention that Cleopatra was a Macedonian Greek figure or whatever, and that it was a family that was very tied into keeping their bloodlines pure, a little bit too tied into it because you do want at least some get some outside the immediate bloodlines. I mean, diversity is your strength. You have to go to Africa. No, you can go to other areas of Greek like. A sufficient strong genetic line just means you have to go one town over or two towns over, but still within the culture and country that you live in. But you don't want to know. You don't want to be marrying your cousin. You maybe like at one point you can say like yeah, but everyone in a country is like if they're one people, ultimately they're going to have some relation. Yeah, but if you go a couple villages over, it's like okay, that's enough genetic drift by that time. Anyway, no, everyone in the world is not istophobic. That the word just doesn't have any meaning anymore. The thing is, it never really did. It was always a Frankfurt School. Bernstein Trotsky way to manipulate NPCs through fear. And then you tell people this and you go, you explain, it's like, it's just stimulus response that you just say these words and you explain the history of Bernstein and the, how to manipulate sheep through fear-based conditioning by just raising these shields of all these istophobic hot words. And then they just keep doing the same thing. And she goes, I just explained to you. And she goes, I was taught in school this. And I go, no, you were programmed in school. It's like you never did any independent research for any of these things that you were, in quotes, taught in school. You were programmed in school. You weren't taught in school. Teaching occurs when you do the independent research and you discover, oh, the teacher was wrong. And the book selected for us in these government schools was wrong also. Shocking. Anyway. So people are coming back to her and going, yeah, none of this makes sense. Like from the fabrics to the domesticating the animals, to the makeup, to the mining, the oring, the metallurgy to create jewelry, the advanced civilizations, none of this was what sub-Saharans were all about. They had their own stories to tell. And you say that to people, and they immediately get offended because they have this worldview that one is better than the other, and you go, no, it's just different. Things are just different. People adapt to their environments. And they just have this preconceived notion that no, what you're actually saying is, I'm saying that a crocodile is not a zebra. They were evolved to different environments. Anyway, no, Egyptians are not sub-Saharan Africans. The history is very clearly known. All these things that they're saying, like even the domesticated animals and the building, the like advanced architecture, is just bizarre. You look at sub-Saharan, you go like, yeah, that there's none of this here, but north there is here. It's like, well, it's the same continent. That's the like that side, it's so tiring. Empire of Dust, it's so tiresome thing. Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of that. So she just calls everyone in Egypt phobic for not wanting for them to be replaced in their own stories. Her whole argument is just an emotional mess. She says blackwashing isn't a thing, but this show is literally blackwashing Greek and Egyptian characters. Of course, nobody cares about the Greeks because they're, I don't know what you want to call them, but they're definitely too fair-skinned to be put on that oppression hierarchy. But the Egyptians are a different story. That's a little bit confusing for people. She's literally lying to your face. She says people are so threatened by blackness that they're separating North Africa from the sub-Saharan black African people. Let me get to this guy's comment. I mean, a lot of the things she's saying don't make sense. And when you try to break it down, like, well, the interviewer never does. Like, threatened by blackness, what does that mean? It's like you're just getting a bunch of Marxist, Bolshevik, hot words, doublespeak, marginalization, oppression, and systemic and systematic. And you start looking at people and go, so let's break down the elements of each one of these words and try to match up the elements to the thrust of what you're saying. Like, what are you saying? What is your issue? What is your argument? And what's your foundation for the argument? And they would just shit themselves because they go, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just repeating hot words. And you go, but that's like civilization doesn't advance when we allow this to continue, when we allow people to just, like the Jabberwockies, to just be mouthpieces for a hidden puppet master who's, telling these people to parrot all these hot words. Anyway. So the difference, no pun intended, is night and day. Just because you share the same continent. I mean, don't South Koreans, I think that's the most furthest east, south on that continent. And then the furthest west would be like the English. So all of that continent is actually all South Koreans because they share the same continent. Oh, well, that's just the opposite of advanced. That's just a dumb argument made by somebody who's dumb and who's so deep in an echo chamber they never have their ideas challenged. Oh, yeah, you're right. That is a dumb argument. The South Koreans are slightly different from the Chinese because they immigrated there 5,000 years ago and they started, geography creates different people. Rivers and mountain ranges, even the hillsides make it a little too difficult. It's like people start to become their own thing. Or you go to the islands of Japan and they become their own thing over there. And even in Japan, there's two different groups over there. It's like these are all just different things. No. The whole continent is just all English. Anyway, so the difference is night and day. Just because you share the same continent doesn't mean that Africa is all black or all Egyptian for that matter, or all I don't know, even the other groups, like how far back the different groups were on Africa. Though I have heard that out of Africa theory has been thrown out, and there's people are still coming up with new theories, but that one is kind of out the door now. But people keep referencing it, and then when you start searching, it goes, oh yeah, that hasn't been in vogue in like 30 years or something. Anyway, is this woman really this stupid, the things she's saying? Yeah, that's kind of the conclusion you start to read. It's hard to tell because there are people who are not stupid. It's just they've never been challenged. And that happens to a lot of people across the political spectrum and across a bunch of other spectrums too. Like people just parrot a lot of things. You go, oh, everyone knows the black guy in the movie dies first. And then you start, I had a buddy who is a smart guy, but he doesn't think. And we started thinking about that and breaking down movies. You go, where's that true? You go, oh, it's not true. So why are you saying that? I don't know. I'm just parent. Or like everyone knows what the South is like, and I stop them and I go, so you learn that from the movies you watched from the movies that were set in like the pre-90s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, where everyone in the South is portrayed by, and you go, who made these movies? People in Hollywood, right? They're these coastal elites, these idiots in Hollywood who were like. So you look at the people who made the movie. And he goes, so have you ever been in the South? I go, no, of course not. I live in LA. That's all flyover country. And then you look at people who watch the movies and like, so everything you know about the South is from TV. Yeah, and then when you get to an adult and somebody challenges you on it, it's like you're able to put on the they live glasses and you go, oh, I don't know anything about the South. I know what Hollywood wants me to know about the South, where it's the evil white sheriff, right? Or the evil blonde guys in a pickup truck and the stars and bars and the rifle racks. It's like my God, those are like demons on earth. Oh, how do you know that? Oh, Hollywood told me. So here are the statistics about that geographic area. Oh my God, Hollywood lied. Like, in fact, every struggle snuggle you've seen, this is a bit much for YouTube. Every of that event you've seen on TV, think about all those type of events you've seen on TV and who the antagonists and protagonists were for those, and then get some facts, some evidence on that issue, and then start looking at the evidence versus the Hollywood portrayal of who's committing these things, and you look, oh, it's been a lie the whole time. Like everything from Hollywood's a lie. Yeah, it's not exactly 180 degrees from reality, but it's always a narrative that Hollywood wants you to believe. And to be fair, it is usually 180 degrees. You know, they're very bad people in Hollywood. Anyway, so a lot of these people are addicted to gaslighting and fantasy works only because they're able to do so because they're so deep in this echo chamber. Their ideas never get challenged. They never have, like this guy says, when the hard time comes, these people will be begging for a normal world again. And then suddenly it's like all these first world nonsense problems are just going to get absolutely flushed away. So as they get deeper into this bizarre fantasy world where they think that they were actually Greek and Egyptian and all these other silly things, I mean, that's a soft bigotry, lower expectation. I look at people and go like, there are really interesting stories to tell in Africa. I keep mentioning the Henry Rider Haggard interpretation of it because he treated things, and this was like 150 years ago, he treated things very fairly about his portrayal of the different groups. And it was fictional stories. It was just, like the Indiana Jones stories were based on his stories. Fun stories. It's like, yeah, but you could go back and tell Shaka Zulu stories from Central Africa or any of the 10,000 tribes in Africa if you want to tell those stories. And even if you want to have fun with it, like the Henry Rider Haggard version of it, it's like, yeah, go for it. Tell those African stories. It's like, that's not the portrayal we want to have of Shaka Zulu slaughtering 10,000 other sub-Saharan Africans and like, heads on pikes and cannibalism and struggle snuggle to take wives. And like, yeah, but that's history. Yeah, but this is 1984, friend. Oh, yeah, we're actually, like, you're actually living through it. Anyway, so then she has this quote. She says something, let's have a little image of this chick, because that is a really smug picture. She says something truly, truly bizarre. She says, the ancient Egyptians, they don't think about race like we do, because race has only really been contextualized since we understood it since the transatlantic slave trade, she argued. That's not how people thought back then, right? They always say right. The Young Turks does it a lot after they say something asinine that you disagree with, but then they say right with a question mark after it, because if you don't say anything and they continue on, it leads the viewer to believe that you have accepted it and that you're in agreement because you haven't said no after they say right. To break them out of that, you'd have to literally say no, I disagree every time they say right with the raised inflection at the end of it. Anna Kasparian and who's that fat guy. Do it all the time. Anyway, so it's really bizarre, but to me, I find it very sad. I feel sad for them. So everything's ad hominem and personal attack against the people who are saying, yeah, you're an idiot who apparently has never read a history book. And how do you know what the ancient Egyptians thought about race? She doesn't seem to understand history at all if she thinks that the Egyptians were actually sub-Saharan black, as was the Greek queen. If anything, the Egyptians were actually of more fair-hued countenance than they are now, because they later had different groups come in. But the DNA tests on the ancient Egyptians, they didn't look like me, but they look more like, I think they said the DNA is more in alignment with the English, actually, for some reason, than with them. It's closer to the modern day English than it is closer to the Egyptians, but it's like English with a tan. It's going to be somewhere in between, for sure. But it's it's clearly not sub-Saharan African, and the Greeks were not sub-Saharan Africans either. That's insane. Anyway, it's the filtration on YouTube is just such a MFer. Then she brings up the human trade. I guess she missed out on the Woman King, where the English and French fought to stop the Dahomey from selling other people who looked. Can I say exactly like Dahomey? Oh, that's istophobic of you. Okay, do the Irish look very similar to the English? Actually, no. The Irish have they're like you're probably gonna find more incidents of dark hair and darker eyes with the Irish, even though the skin is just as fair and beautiful. Anyway, so the Dahomey they fought very hard to sell other people. They did not want to sell palm tree oil, no matter what the movie says with that Star Wars guy Finn. Oh, we just want to sell palm tree oil, but these damn French and English are forcing us to sell people. So they brought down warships to fight you, to stop you from selling people. No, 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 no. Palm tree oil. There's like no shortage of history that like the Dahomey were very proud, as were plenty other African tribes. If you've ever read, oh god, what's that book, Roots? I'm sad I gave it away, but I have books on bookshelves like just a stupid amount. I gave that book away, and even in the precursor to the book, they had to come out and they go like, yeah, this book is fiction. The author was sued because he plagiarized from other stories. They plagiarized from the 1912, I think it's called The African Book. You read Roots, like just the first 50 pages. It's bizarre, this fantasy world. It's a trip to read. I mean, you will laugh out loud reading Roots. It's this bizarre portrayal of African fantasy world, and then you read a little about other historical occurrences, and you're like, oh, this is out of this fucking world. People are insane. Anyway, so it's a trip. So you sell this book called Roots, and it says it's plagiarized fiction, and they made a TV show that got a bunch of people all riled up, and it's like, but it was literally plagiarized. Like, gosh, I wonder who's pulling the strings on that. Anyway, so the Dahomey tribe were the French and English fought to stop them, but you know. Didn't they, so the movie The Woman King, it's all BS? Yeah, everything's BS. Everything that's coming from Hollywood is BS. Guys, it's been BS for a very long time. You know, what is it was history and an agreed upon set of lies? It's like, so who writes history? The victor? Oh, so it's not. Anyway, so this sub-Saharan African is calling the Egyptians istophobic for not wanting to be replaced in their own stories. That's let me get to this other ridiculous image. That's the guideline. Yeah, your ladies in waiting in sub-Saharan Africa are actually North African Egyptians who built this advanced civilization that is nowhere found south of the Sahara. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have to make any sense. So she's calling the Egyptians istophobic. That's the bar for istophobicism. If you don't want to be replaced in your own stories. Then she claims to be a medium spirit guide channeling the ancient Egyptians who are now somehow black and yet somehow also held black slaves. So then the blacks also enslaved the Jews and other blacks, which, as I said, the guy had on the soles of his shoes so he could walk on them. That's how much disdain he had for those two groups. Which is actually a decent theory because there were, like I said, huge slave traders. As seen with the true history of the Dahomey tribe, there were several slave trading tribes in Africa. There still are. And nobody cares. Literally, nobody cares about modern slavery. There's zero concern about the African and Middle Eastern slave trade. Nobody cares. Nobody cares at all. Oh, well, we can't get anything from it. Oh, so that's what this is all about. It's like, yeah, I think we're pretty clear about what this is all about. Buying large mansions. So she's saying that she's going to get views from hate watchers. Oh, dear God, this is fucking ridiculous. I don't think so because it looks like The Woman King where it's something that's so bad that nobody even bothers to hate watch it. And for this, I'm not even going to pirate it because what's the point? It takes history and it runs it through the Frankfurt School globalist machine to output this 1984 Bolshevik levels of nonsense. I mean, this is absurd. I think this was careful enough. How many? 2, 4, 6, 8 pointed star. Okay, anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.